Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into our webinar, Changing the Conversation, Culinary Techniques to Meet the Needs of a Client's Diagnosis Without Sacrificing Flavor for Diabetes. While this webinar is focusing on the topic of diabetes, we also have other webinars that focus on other disease states with that same food-first approach.
So we did have a previous version of this presentation that we did last year in 2019 for Today's Dietitian, but we are doing a new version of that today. And as Julie just mentioned, we have a bunch of other webinars and workshops. So if you text CN FREE to 917-905-8801, you'll get information about these workshops and webinars. So that's me on the left. I'm a registered dietitian and a chef. You can find out more about me at Chef Abby Gelman on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, or you can go to my site, chefabbygelman.com. And I work with a wide variety of clients as a spokesperson, recipe and product developer, teacher, educator, and private chef.
And I'm Julie Harrington. I'm also a chef and registered dietitian. You can find me on social media at chefjulie_RD or my website, julieharringtonrd.com. I also focus on everything culinary nutrition by doing a lot of cooking classes, recipe development, and acting as a spokesperson for brands.
So today we have 4 main objectives. We're going to learn how to make evidence-based nutrition education relatable to clients and patients through food talk. We're going to learn about the impact culinary nutrition programs can have on behavior mediators such as stress, knowledge, confidence, and goal setting. We'll identify a variety of culinary nutrition needs and tips related to diabetes and how to help our clients and patients integrate them. And we're going to practice our own culinary skills and kind of talk about how to do that and how to gain culinary confidence, which we can then translate to our clients.
So as dietitians and healthcare professionals, we know the basics and things to look for in blood work when there's a diagnosis of diabetes. But just quickly to review, here are these different biomarkers, and it's really helpful for clients and patients to bring that hard data within your sessions or within your education so you can watch trends over time. So 30.3 million people have diabetes. So that's 9.4% of the US population. And out of those 30.3 million people, 23.1 million people are diagnosed and 7.2 are undiagnosed. So encouraging clients to get their blood work done regularly and having access to that blood work is going to be helpful because then they can watch their trends over time as well. Also, there's a free risk test that you can go to on the American Diabetes Association, which the client can easily answer a couple questions and it can evaluate their risk.
So let's talk quickly first about type 1 diabetes. It is approximately 5 to 10% of all diabetes cases. And unlike type 2, it's an autoimmune condition. So essentially the immune system has attacked the insulin-producing beta cells of the pancreas, which creates complete total insulin deficiency. So this is increasing globally by approximately 3% every year. And anyone who does have type 1 diabetes usually uses an insulin pump or an insulin pen or some sort of syringe for injection.
So according to the Center for Disease and Control and Prevention, the prevalence of gestational diabetes is as high as 9% among pregnant women. So around the 16th week during a normal pregnancy, the body starts to require more insulin to ensure glucose enters the body's cells. So when a woman is pregnant, the hormones produced by the placenta can create insulin resistance. So most pregnant women will produce greater amounts of insulin adequate to control the blood glucose levels. But in some women around the 24th to 28th week of pregnancy, the insulin production can't keep up and they're unable to overcome that insulin resistance. And these women typically develop gestational diabetes. So there are some women who are more at risk of gestational diabetes, and this diagnosis occurs more frequently among African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, and Native Americans. And other risk factors can include age, weight, medical history, and family history of diabetes. So to test for gestational diabetes, women are given the syrupy solution to drink, and 1 hour later, their blood is drawn to measure their glucose levels. So if it's above the 100 to 140 milligrams per deciliter, they'll be given an oral glucose tolerance test. This test involves fasting for 8 hours and drinking that sugary beverage, and they're retested again to see if they do have diagnosis of that gestational diabetes. So in most cases, gestational diabetes disappears with the birth of the baby, but they're more at risk for developing type 2 diabetes later on, and they're more at risk for developing gestational diabetes if they have another pregnancy.
So pre-diabetes, in 2015, more than 86 million Americans were estimated to have pre-diabetes. And if it's left untreated, 37% or more of those diagnosed with pre-diabetes may go on to develop type 2 within 4 years. So how do you know if you have pre-diabetes? Generally, your A1C, your hemoglobin A1C, would be between 5.7 and 6.4%, and that would categorize you as having pre-diabetes. Or your blood glucose levels are higher than normal, so in a fasting state, they would be 100 to 125 milligrams per deciliter, which does not place you high enough to be classified as diabetes. So when we're talking about pre-diabetes, we really want to talk about preventative measures. And we as practitioners are in a very good and unique position to play an important role in pre-diabetes management. So lifestyle modifications, a food-first approach really can get very far with the population of people who have pre-diabetes.
In 2015, there were 13.7 million adults aged 18 to 64 diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and 5.6 million had diabetes but were unaware of their condition. So type 2 means when your body doesn't use insulin properly. And while some people can control their blood sugar levels with healthy eating and exercise, others may need medication or insulin to help with that management.
So when we're talking about medical nutrition therapy, the goal really is to prevent or at least slow the rate of development of chronic complications of diabetes by modifying nutrient intake and lifestyle. So we want to achieve and maintain blood glucose levels that are normal or as close to normal as is safely possible. We want to get our patients to have a lipid and lipoprotein profile that reduces the risk for vascular disease or heart disease. We want to make sure that our blood pressure levels are in a normal range or as close to normal as safely possible. And we really want to prevent or slow any of the other diseases and complications that arise out of having diabetes.
So when we're starting to talk to our clients and providing that nutrition education, we want to start with a food first approach. And we kind of break it down into these 3 pillars, leading with the positive. It's not focusing fully on what we're removing or what you can't have, but what we're adding to our plate and what changes in a positive way we can make to help with our diagnosis. Also, we want to empower clients of what they can be doing and what their starting point is and how they can slowly make these tweaks that are achievable. And then in turn, having these more food-focused goals. So we're kind of ditching that PES statement, which is very formal, that we can add in our notes. But for our client, we wanted something that is definitely very food-focused and straightforward. So this concept helps bridge the gap of nutrition education to with what clients understand and may already know about food.
So we know that nutrition is not one size fits all. So it's important to address individual nutrition needs and taking into account personal and cultural preferences and definitely a willingness to change. We have to meet our clients and our patients where they're at and actively get them to engage in self-management and make it a collaborative experience where we're working with someone.
It's also really important to address how to maintain the pleasure of eating by only limiting food choices when indicated by scientific evidence. So, majority of the time, clients and patients know mostly what they need to be doing, but we're also competing with the latest diet trends. How many times have we heard potatoes are bad, food is too much sugar, high fat diets and very low carb diets will help my diabetes? So we again want to go back to that scientific evidence and really talk about the why behind it and the research behind it.
So there are client barriers and practitioner barriers. So clients and patients generally barriers could be involving time, not enough time to cook. It's too time consuming to cook. Maybe grocery shopping takes too much time. Maybe people have low kitchen confidence. They don't cook very often. They're not comfortable cooking. Um, Maybe they need new ideas. They just keep cooking the same thing over and over again, and they're not sure how to kind of break out into other things. Maybe there are multiple medical conditions, and the idea of cooking for a laundry list of things is overwhelming. Maybe food insecurity is an issue, or just general budget and food costs. Maybe there's confusion about what they're allowed to eat, or what they want to eat, or what everyone is telling them to eat. And maybe it's just as simple as an unwillingness to try new foods. There's really kind of a long list of barriers here, all based on each individual uniquely. And then, of course, there are practitioner barriers. Maybe you as a practitioner have trouble translating evidence-based research through food and actual trying to make it a food first approach. Maybe you have low kitchen confidence and your skills in the kitchen are not exceptional and you feel overwhelmed and don't particularly like to cook. We all struggle in different ways. So we're not trying to tell you as a practitioner that you need to be a professional chef or go to culinary school, but we want to get you to a place where you have a basic skill set so that you feel comfortable with a certain list of food first approaches and cooking techniques, and you can then teach those to your clients.
So meeting your client where they're at is key. It really helps build trust with the person that you're working with and helps provide creative solutions that you can with together. So for every barrier that comes up, come up with a solution together. So what is preventing them from doing that said goal right now? So with that being said, is you can't expect a client who barely cooks to begin preparing all their meals from scratch. Providing them shortcuts, like if the goal is to include more whole grains into their diet, maybe they're buying pre-packaged par-cooked rice, frozen brown rice within and adding it to their repertoire. And starting with just simply one meal at a time. What is something that they're consistently eating? If it's consistently eating dinner at the same time every day, maybe that's the one meal that we start focusing on tweaking to help with their diagnosis. So again, it's going to focus on those food focused goals by ditching that PEST statement, providing those food first approach goals. Like again, purchasing brown rice can simply be their goal, and that can help them include more whole grains into their diet. But along with that food first goal, provide the evidence-based why. Why is adding those whole grains going to be important for their diabetes? It will help provide them energy, help maintain a blood sugar level control. So again, empowering them and educating them to make those choices on their own. They're going to be more confident in making those choices. And starting with those lateral shifts, going back to that, if your goal is to incorporate some more whole grains, back to what are they doing consistently already? How can we simply start tweaking it? So say they have a sandwich for lunch every day, but it's typically on white bread. Have half of it be white bread and then the other slice be your whole wheat bread. And that is starting with that lateral shift. It's not changing much, but you're working towards that goal.
So we want to go through some basics. The basics are the basics for a reason. So as far as diabetes, we're going to talk about carbohydrates and sugar. So the American Diabetes Association recommends that eating patterns include everything really: whole grains, fruits, vegetables, lean protein, legumes, and low fat dairy products. And then we want to limit high saturated fats, trans fat, high sodium, and added sugars. Um, but obviously, it's not glamorous and flashy, and not everyone is going to want to be talking about it. And getting people to make this as part of their daily routine may be a challenge. So we want to remember that we have to build trust with our clients. We have to take this as an individual, person by person basis. It's not a one size fits all approach. And we really need to start with lateral shifts and meeting our clients where they're at and really build that trust.
So, starting with carbohydrates, we live in a society where there's a lot of carb phobia, and carbs are found in a lot of our foods. So, the irony about this carb phobia is people don't actually know that there's carbohydrates in most of our foods, including our fruits, vegetables, grains, dairy, and plant-based proteins. So that's a good starting point. It's not like you're grilling them on their education and knowledge. It's just opening their eyes to understanding that carbohydrates are found in majority of our foods, and what is going to be a more mindful carbohydrate choice versus something that's going to maybe spike up their blood sugar faster. So, carbohydrate counting has been a very useful tool. And again, looking at your client, understanding their needs and wants, and seeing if this is going to be beneficial for them. But it helps improve the average glucose levels if they start to do it, and they don't necessarily need to be writing it down in a journal for a long period of time because they get the gist of it. But it can also improve quality of life, so they're not feeling like they're limiting food choices. They can have a little bit of everything, but being mindful of the amount of carbs in each meal. And also treatment satisfaction. Again, they have more control of what they're eating, how many carbs. You can work with them in that aspect. But the basic carbohydrate counting is just a structure approach that emphasizes the consistency and timing and the amount of carbohydrates that are consumed. Plus, you can see over time too, if they're also journaling their blood glucose levels, you can see what kind of meals affect it accordingly. So counting is based on the principle that 15 grams of carbohydrates is equal to one carbohydrate serving or one carb choice. So it's bringing that structure and visual to them, like one slice of bread is equal to one carb choice, a 3-ounce baked potato, or a half or one small piece of fruit, or one cup of yogurt. Again, putting that visualization and providing them those tools to make carb counting easy for them if that's going to be a sustainable choice.
Okay, now let's talk about sugar. So there are two main types of sugars: naturally occurring and added. So naturally occurring sugars are things that you find in fruit or milk, the sugars that are naturally in fruits, foods. Added sugars are those that are added during processing. So examples could be the sugar you put in a cookie, or the table sugar you add to your coffee, or any kind of simple syrup that is in a canned fruit. Um, there are many different names for sugar, and they're all hidden on many packages. So one thing is to make sure that you and your clients understand what you're looking at on the nutrition label. So it might say something like high fructose corn syrup, or something else that you're not sure what it is, and that's just sugar in a different name. So it's important that we understand all of that. And then sugar substitutes, which a lot of people like to use sugar substitutes instead of sugar. And they can be broken down into two categories: artificial sweeteners and sugar alcohols. But the important thing to understand is that sugar-free does not mean carb-free, especially with our diabetic patients. So we need to determine whether or not these products are in line with their disease management goals and personal preferences. So artificial sweetener examples are aspartame and saccharin. Well, sugar alcohols are sweeteners that do produce a small rise in blood sugar, and they often have OL at the end, so sorbitol or xylitol. We need to help our clients successfully incorporate them and learn how to, again, read the nutrition facts labels and determine if these should be part of their approach.
So it really starts with going back to the basics. The basics are the key to long-term success. And the basics are basics for a reason. So while some clients may be well educated and others are just simply starting from scratch, the basics are important to go over. It not only may refresh your memory, but also can identify misinformation to correct them with evidence-based research. So there's not one style, not one food, or not one specific eating pattern that's going to work for everyone. Nutrition is not a one size fits all approach. So simply break it down by each food group, get a better understanding of how they're incorporating that food group into their diet, what misinformation they may have about that food group, and how to address different barriers.
So first, we're going to talk about fruit, which is a really big one for when we're talking about diabetes. People who have diabetes may often tell you that they're afraid of eating fruit, that they can't eat fruit, that they're confused and they try to avoid fruit. So we want to really talk to them about how when you eat a whole piece of fruit, the peel, the whole fruit, it provides a lot of fiber, which slows down the rate of blood sugar and helps prevent those spikes. So because of this fiber and all of those wonderful vitamins and nutrients, we do want to encourage people to eat whole fruit. Um, so how do we do that? So there's obviously fresh fruit. Um, we want to definitely encourage people to eat whole, fresh fruit. There's also frozen fruit. Frozen produce is picked and frozen at its peak. So this is also super healthy. All the same vitamins and minerals are there. So having them make sure that they have frozen berries, for example, always in their freezer is a great food focus goal. There's also canned fruit. These are pantry staples that are affordable, great to have around long term. They're always available. And again, these are also fruit is picked at its peak and then canned within 4 hours. So we just want to have them looking for the no sugar added varieties, the ones that are packed in their own juices. And then dried fruit. Once again, look for no sugar added varieties and just make sure that it's a much smaller portion size because this is whole fruit that is kind of condensed. So it does have more of a kick when it comes to blood sugar. So a food focused goal could be purchasing and trying a new variety of orange. Maybe your patient really enjoys clementines every week. So why don't you have them try a Cara orange or a blood orange or something that is different than their normal and see what they think of it. Maybe they're going to add frozen fruit to oatmeal or yogurt. Maybe they're going to add some fruit to a salad. Maybe having grilled fruit or cooked or baked fruit for dessert instead of something else that they may have usually had. Really try to think outside the box and work with your clients to come up with some ideas that make them comfortable that they can get behind.
And then we have vegetables. It's easier for visualization to say, fill half your plate with your non starchy vegetables instead of saying, try to get at least 3 to 5 servings of non starchy vegetables per day. So, one serving of vegetables is equal to about a half a cup cooked or about 1 cup raw. And there's a difference between our starchy and non starchy vegetables. So, vegetables can be classified in two main types based on their starch content. Starchy vegetables include corn, peas, and potatoes, while non-starchy vegetables include varieties such as broccoli, tomatoes, cauliflower, mushrooms, and the list can go on. The goal is not to demonize these starchy vegetables. It's that they just have a different part on our plate. Where that rice or that grain is would be your potatoes. That's would be the starchy vegetables would go. And again, filling half your plate with those non-starchy vegetables. We want to focus on the non-starchy vegetables because they are lower in starch and they are lower in that glycemic scale. So they're high in vitamins, minerals, and fiber, which can help maintain a healthier blood sugar level. So again, it's finding creative ways to include more vegetables into your client's diet. It can be simply just snacking on them, but what if they're just not really into vegetables as by themselves? So how can we incorporate it into dishes? Maybe we have a burger and you are grating zucchini into it, or carrots, or even chopping mushrooms up really fine. So it's incorporated within that into that mixture. It can be sneaking some spinach into a smoothie. Again, finding those creative outlets or realistic approaches for your client is going to be key. So our first recipe video, we have some roasted broccoli, and it simply just goes through how to properly roast our vegetables, because that is a great cooking technique that elevates our vegetables with that great flavor, that caramelization. So we have um, roasted broccoli here, but it can easily be translated to other vegetables. And then we have a tahini sauce, and kind of adds a new component. It adds flavor, healthy fats, and kind of jazzes it up than just eating roasted broccoli by itself.
Hi, I'm Abby,
And I'm Julie, and we're both registered dietitians and chefs.
and today we're making roasted broccoli with tahini yogurt sauce. So first we have a bunch of broccoli here. It's been chopped into florets. We're going to put it all on a baking sheet that is lined with foil. Our oven just got to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. We're gonna pour some oil over this and some salt and pepper.
So this is your simple part of roasting. Once you have this technique down, you can really do this with any other vegetable.
This works great for potatoes, sweet potatoes, cauliflower, and if you have a patient or you yourself are going through something like chemo for cancer treatment, it's very important, obviously, to have a lot of fruits and vegetables, and this is an easy way to cook them and kind of keep them on hand, or have your friends and family also roast vegetables and bring them over for you as well. So we're gonna put this into the oven. And while that's roasting, we're gonna make a sauce.
So what we have here is I already mixed the tahini with the lemon juice. So tahini is ground sesame seeds, and sesame seeds have a lot of really great health benefits, including copper and selenium.
And this is a nice way to kind of add a little something special to your roasted vegetables. So roasted vegetables alone are delicious, but if you want to jazz them up a little or add some more nutrients, having a dip or a dressing or sauce made with tahini and yogurt and that kind of thing really adds something special and a little something different to your food. We're gonna add a little salt in there.
So a lot of times, depending on what type of cancer, it can alter taste buds. So you need to be sensitive to the person's preferences at that time.
Correct. Okay, so we'll see you in about 20 minutes when the broccoli's done. Okay, so we're gonna get the broccoli out, but first we wanna make a nice presentation. So we're gonna put that yogurt tahini dressing right on the plate. And then I'm gonna get the broccoli out.
This is really great too, because you can always batch cook this and have it ready for the week, because when you heat it up, it's really quick and simple. You're not starting the process from the beginning.
And then we'll just put the broccoli right in there.
Of course, if you're not eating it right away, serve it on the side.
All right, so then the hot broccoli also will go into the dressing, and the heat will thin it out a little bit. And then we'll garnish it with some sesame seeds. There you have it. I'm Abby.
And I'm Julie, and we're both registered dietitians and chefs.
And this is our roasted broccoli with tahini yogurt sauce. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so moving on to whole grains. We know that whole grains are good sources of fiber, which helps to slow the absorption of glucose into the blood. They're also packed with vitamins and minerals, and making them an optimal choice, these complex carbohydrates versus refined carbohydrates. So we want to talk about making half of your grains whole. And there have been several studies that suggest that whole grains are protective against type 2 diabetes. Their intact nutrients and fiber in the whole grains, combined with the lower glycemic index, help to improve insulin sensitivity and glucose metabolism. So we really want to encourage our clients to try whole grains. So one other thing that we like to talk about is make it visual for them. So if you, for example, give them the idea that you take a piece of white bread and then you take a piece of whole grain hearty bread and you put each slice in water or like a orange juice. In less than a minute, probably in 30 seconds, that white bread, you can't pick it out anymore. It's falling apart. But that whole piece of bread, that whole grain bread is still, you could pick it up, it stays intact, it stays together. And this is what's happening in our bodies. So we really want our diabetic clients especially to have this visual and understand that our body breaks down the whole grain much slower and a much longer process than if they had a refined white bread or a refined white grain. So really helping them to understand what is happening. So as Julie mentioned before, we want to do lateral shifts, and you can start by something as easy as making one piece of bread in their sandwich whole grain versus white. You can have them try, maybe the food first approach is trying one new whole grain every week. So maybe they try farro this week and next week they try sorghum and on and on. Label reading will be important. Maybe they want to purchase a frozen whole grain. You can get brown rice and quinoa and all sorts of things frozen. There's a lot of really good ways to add in a food-focused goal for whole grains. We just have to work with our clients and see what works for them.
So protein is an essential part of the diet, and it's important for modular of glucose metabolism. So for most people with diabetes, the amount of protein you need is the same for people without diabetes. And the National Institute of Medicine recommends that protein should typically provide 10 to 35% of total calories. So think about a 3-ounce portion of protein is about a size of the deck of playing cards. And again, that visual can really help clients understand. Like we saw in that picture for the veggies, it's only a quarter of your plate focusing on that protein, whereas half the plate is really focused on the non-starchy vegetables. The American diet is a little protein obsessed, but we want protein throughout our day, but it doesn't need to be the star of our dish. It should be about a quarter of our plate. So when we're talking about protein, we also want to focus on both animal and plant-based sources of protein. So lean animal protein sources include seafood, poultry, eggs, pork, beef, and lamb, and dairy products. So when we think about our pork, beef, and lamb, we want to opt for leaner cuts. So when you hear the term loin or round, like eye round, tenderloin, those are indicating that those are leaner sources. Additionally, you have our plant-based sources of protein, like our beans, lentils, and legumes. And they're a double whammy because they're providing us protein, actually triple whammy, because protein, carbohydrates, plus they're adding fiber. So you just need to be mindful that those plant-based sources of protein are contributing to some part of your carbohydrate intake. So we want to add plenty of variety. We want to add different cooking techniques. And some food-focused goals could be buying a pre-made rotisserie chicken and utilizing that chicken in so many different ways. It can be just alone for dinner one night with some sides. It can be on a salad the next day. It could be chopped and made into a chicken salad. Another food-focused goal can be cooking a batch of beans and the same thing, topping it in different ways, maybe roasting some chickpeas for a nice snack, or simply hard boiling a batch of eggs for the week because they'll last in your fridge. And it's going through that simple process of teaching them how to do it properly, because I think that sometimes is often a barrier. So after you hard-boiled eggs, you want to put them in an ice-cold water bath because that stops the cooking process, and it will prevent that green ring that goes around that yolk. So that's a protein-packed snack. It can be part of a breakfast. It can be topped on salads. So many different ways to utilize hard-boiled eggs. So our next recipe, we have chicken tacos. We decided to make our own homemade seasoning. So you can make a big batch of a blend like that so you can reduce the sodium intake, and then you can use it for other recipes later down the road. Also, we're adding different depths and flavors without adding different sodium or chemicals that usually comes in those pre-made blends. And tacos are fun because it's like kind of like a choose your own adventure kind of thing. You can have a bunch of different veggies, different meats, different plant-based proteins, and everyone can make their own customizable tacos.
Hi, I'm Abby.
And I'm Julie, and we are both registered dietitians and chefs.
And today we are making chicken tacos. So we have a bunch of stuff in front of us.
And the focus on this recipe today is we're focusing this recipe for people with renal disease. There are different stages of chronic kidney disease, and the dietary needs can definitely vary. So the main three components that we definitely want to focus on is sodium, phosphorus, and potassium. And we kind of adapted a traditional taco recipe to make sure it fits in with those different protocols. Tacos are one of our favorite kinds of foods to be eating, so we definitely want to make sure that everyone can be enjoying them as well. So first we have our taco seasoning, because that can be loaded with sodium. And sodium is filtered through our kidneys, and if our kidneys are not functioning properly, it's not functioning and not clearing out the excess sodium. So a low sodium diet is recommended for a chronic kidney disease.
Exactly. So right here we've got a bunch of other flavors to make sure that everything tastes great. We have chili powder, paprika, black pepper, cumin, onion powder, garlic powder, dried oregano, and red chili flakes. So this has no salt in it, but you really won't lose out on the flavor. There's so many different components here. And we've swapped out some of the normal taco vegetables for a couple things that are lower in the things we don't want to have when we have a renal issue. So we have some zucchini here, we have yellow pepper, and some red onion.
And by sauteing them with the taco seasoning, you're really gonna have all that really great flavor. So with sodium, it gets a little confusing with reading labels. So I'll show an example for our corn tortillas today. When we look at the nutrition label for sodium, it says milligrams. It's really hard to visualize how many milligrams something is. So instead, scoot over to that percent daily value and you can quickly look at something and identify if it's low or high sodium. So 5% or lower for the percent daily value is considered a low amount, where 20% or higher is considered a high amount.
So we're gonna take all of this and we're gonna move over to the stove. Okay, so we're over at the stove. I've been heating up the pan, so it's nice and hot. We're gonna add in our oil, which is getting hot really quickly. We're gonna put in our onion. Woo, you can hear it sizzle. Beautiful. And our pepper, and our zucchini.
So you can definitely mix and match too with your favorite lower potassium vegetables here, so you can have a new variety every time.
I'm gonna dump in all the spices now too. The cooking actually is called blooming the spices. So the cooking releases the oil and adds flavor.
So we use all the spices here, but if you wanted to, you can make a larger batch and just take a little bit for every time you're making tacos. Because like you would if you were buying it at the store, it would be already pre-made. But now this is a salt-free version.
So we're gonna cook these for about 5 minutes till they start to get tender. And then we will take them and move them to a bowl, and we will put the chicken in there and cook that next. Okay, so now we have cooked chicken and cooked vegetables, and we're gonna incorporate everything together here.
So a little tip that we did here is we took a damp paper towel and wrapped our corn tortillas and just put it in the microwave for about 30 seconds so they're nice and warm and more pliable.
Now we have left out the tomatoes and sour cream and cheese, depending on what stage of chronic kidney disease that you're in is whether or not you're actually able to eat those things. So obviously you plan accordingly for your clients. Now we're gonna make one. Delicious. So there you have it, our kidney-friendly chicken tacos for renal disease, or also delicious if you don't have renal disease. I'm Abby.
And I'm Julie, and we're both registered dietitians and chefs.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again.
Okay, dairy foods. So specifically fermented dairy, so yogurt, kefir, hard cheeses may be associated with reduced inflammatory biomarkers associated with cardiovascular disease and diabetes. They have an inverse relationship with diabetes. So they're part of a functional food, healthy eating pattern. We like to see, especially for diabetic patients, low fat or fat-free dairy foods. And for a food-focused approach, we can say something as simple as a yogurt parfait layered with blueberries and nuts for a breakfast or a snack, but we can also talk to our clients and think about other ways to incorporate dairy and make a food-first approach goal. So maybe we're gonna start adding new types of dairy. Maybe we're gonna use kefir for our smoothies, or maybe we're going to use buttermilk to bake something. Or maybe it's as simple as switching from a whole milk dairy product to a 2% product. Maybe your client likes cottage cheese and they haven't had cottage cheese in a while, and now there's so many great cottage cheese products on the market. Perhaps that's something to integrate to breakfast or a snack, or even something as simple as using grated cheddar and adding that to scrambled eggs. And then, of course, beans and legumes, which we love. They can help with the management of blood sugar levels and diabetes because they don't spike the blood sugar. They have a ton of fiber. Pulses have 4 times more fiber than a serving of brown rice. We also love them because they're affordable. You can get them dried, frozen, canned. And you can cook them in a pressure cooker, in a slow cooker, on your stovetop, or if you get a canned or a frozen version, you don't even have to cook them at all. So these are really versatile, easy to use, affordable, budget-friendly options. So maybe the food-focused goal could be pureeing white beans to replace some cream cheese and a spinach artichoke dip. Maybe you could have people trying different types of lentils or beans as their food focus goal. Maybe they add beans to a salad or add beans to soup and stews and whole grains. Or maybe if someone is comfortable cooking, you can have them add some quinoa and beans and make vegetarian meatballs. Or maybe vegetarian burgers where they have black beans and lentils in them. These are all ideas, really kind of sky's the limit here as far as legumes are concerned. And our final video is lentil bolognese. We've swapped out ground meat and added in lentils, which mimic the texture of ground meat. They're a healthy and flavorful replacement. They have a ton of plant-based protein. Another idea here is to do half ground meat and half lentils, and try to get people just to bring it into their routine. In our version, we've added yogurt to add some creaminess. You can, of course, leave that out to make a vegan version. And we're using zucchini noodles, which decreases the total amount of carbohydrates in the dish, but gives it a boost of vegetables.
Hi, I'm Abby Gelman from Culinary Nutrition Cuisine.
And I'm registered dietitian and chef Julie Harrington.
Today we are making lentil bolognese. So we have a bunch of really beautiful ingredients here before us, and we're making a vegetarian bolognese sauce, which is usually ground beef or ground pork or veal or lamb, that kind of thing, right?
The base of our sauce is going to start with mirepoix, which is a combination of onions, carrots, and celery. So I have my pot preheated. You always want to start with a warm pan. We're adding our heart healthy olive oil, and that's going to heat up as well.
Ooh. And you can hear it sizzling, which means your pan and your oil are hot enough. She's going to put a little salt in there, which actually we love to use early on when we're cooking over heat because it will help leach out the water from the vegetables, which actually helps them cook faster and makes them brown quicker and possibly more depending on how long you cook them. So that's a little quick tip. So we're going to saute this for a few minutes, and then we're going to add in our other components like our lentils.
So anytime you start with a good solid base of a sauce too, this is an easy way to add more veggies to your meal.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the lentils, you're getting, in a half a cup of lentils, you get 12 grams of plant-based protein, which is amazing. And you also get 15% of your daily iron needs, which is particularly important if you are vegetarian or vegan. A lot of people get iron from animal-based proteins and products, and if you're a vegetarian or vegan, you really don't eat that much animal-based products, or if any at all.
All right, I'm going to add in our lentils, and they're going to come nice and soft along with our diced tomatoes.
So we'll add that, and then we'll put some unsalted vegetable stock in there as well, and we'll simmer everything. It'll take about 20 or 30 minutes to cook, and then we have 2 ingredients left that we will add in for some extra flavor and creaminess, really.
We're going to bring this to a simmer, and it's going to simmer for about 30 minutes until our lentils are nice and tender, as well as our carrots and our celery. See you in 30. And we're back. Our lentils have been simmering. They're nice and tender. I'm just adding the finishing touches. We're adding that balsamic vinegar and a little bit of that plain Greek yogurt.
All right, and now I've got our zucchini noodles here. I'm just gonna, look how long that is. I'm gonna plate them right in the middle here. And then we're gonna spoon some of that gorgeous lentil bolognese right on top. And there you have it. I'm Abby Gelman of Culinary Nutrition Cuisine.
And I'm registered dietitian and chef Julie Harrington.
And this is our lentil bolognese with zucchini noodles. Thanks for joining us.
All right, so with that coming to an end, putting it into practice, it doesn't matter if you're clinical, private practice, community, corporate wellness, or even media and social media, there's a way to incorporate this food-first approach. In a clinical setting, it could be that conversation about empowering your clients about what they are adding to their plate versus what they're taking away. In private practice, you can cue up visual images, products, images, graphics as a way to explain things. In the community, cooking classes and demos are really great because, again, they're seeing a food being made. You can talk about that food like we did in our videos. Corporate wellness, you could do, again, cooking demos or tastings in a presentation, but it helps them connect the dots when you, again, bring that food-focused approach. And then within media and social media, it's providing those key sound bites, because in social media, especially something like Twitter, you have a limited amount of words, or you're doing a media segment and you're only on for a couple minutes. So you want to be able to provide those food-focused sound bites. Here are references if you would like some more information.
Okay, so thank you so much for being with us for our diabetes culinary nutrition webinar. You can, if you are an RD, look in your chat. Hopefully there is a CPE certificate there for you, or for those of you who are able to get CEU credit for this. If for some reason it's not there or you don't see it, you can contact us at culinarynutritionworkshops@gmail.com. You can see more about our webinars at chefabbygelman.com. You can see more about our workshops at culinarynutritionworkshops.com. And of course, it's also very easy to text CN free to 917-905-8801 to just get information automatically about all of our workshops and our webinars. So thanks for joining, and we hope to see you at another webinar or workshop very soon.